Hey, good evening. Welcome to American Reversion. You might hear some talking back in the background. That's because the family's getting ready for dinner back there, and I just wanted to shoot a short one here. I had put up another one earlier today um, and meant to get back and cover a lot of the crazy stuff, but I've been tuned in to, of course, as you might imagine, the news to kind of keep track of what's going on over in Ukraine, as I'm sure many of you have. As much as we would like to think that we need to keep our mind on and our eyes on other things, and we do. These things, especially when they start, kind of focus our attention because there are a lot of things in this. One of my sons is sneaking up quietly up the steps behind you, also, as not to cause a disturbance. Thank you, buddy. Um, it is important to keep our eyes on these things simply because we find things within the larger situation that that point to things we need to deal with. If that was obtuse enough, I put one up earlier, like I said, and kind of talking about these things. But as I was watching the news today, I switched back and forth between, checking the aggregators that I always check online and then Fox. And I even switch over to CNN because I want to see what they're saying. And I'll be honest, there's not that big a difference between the way that Fox is covering it and the way that CNN is covering it, at least now. And that's simply because politics hasn't yet gotten involved. I'm sure there will be a split in the road as soon as the first blush is off of the situation and they start either praising or finding fault with different people. I found one thing kind of, before I ask the question, I'm going to ask a question here, and that is, do you belong to the state? I'm going to get back with that. Um, did I say to the state? That's what I meant. Do you belong? Do you, and those around you belong to the state? Anyway, I was kind of amused as I was flipping back between channels. I guess I must have been on CNN. All of a sudden, who's up there telling us all about everything in the world? And that's David Petraeus. Remember Petraeus, the general and former CIA director who had to resign because they found out in the course of an FBI investigation that he had been dallying with his biographer. I forget her name. But here is a guy, from what I remember, and I don't remember a lot, top of his class, right, all the way through the Army, 30-some years in the Army. He was head of everything you can be head of in the Army, and then went on to be CIA director. And he ends up messing around with the woman who is writing his biography. Now, if that is not stupid enough, there's a lot of guys that get hooked up in that. I mean, in the game, we always, we're looking for the guys who are compromised by, dalliances. And women, but not that many women. Doesn't matter. But guys, for some reason, who are smart in other areas can be stupid in that area. But I always found that if somebody was stupid enough in that area, I wouldn't trust them in other areas anyway. And not just stupid, but the matter it's the morality of it. And I love how these people who show their own ignorance, their own stupidity, and their own immorality like to lecture us, right? And not only did he have a little dalliance with her, but he gave her classified information. And now he's up here. He's become a big darling. I haven't seen him for years because I don't watch CNN. But I remember afterwards he started appearing all over the place. He had a book. He lectures. He's was with some think tank for a while. He's doing very well. He has done very well for a guy who cheated on his wife and gave away classified information. Whoa, good for him, right? That's the kind of world we deal with. So when we see our government leaders trying to take the high ground in things, it just it's always amused me, amused/disgusted, right? I'm sure you feel the same way. Well, an interesting thing came up today while I was watching, and I think I was watching CNN when this little news bit came up, and they said that um, that Ukraine was stopping any males between 18 and 60 or 65 from leaving the country. Okay, now we're seeing all the people try to get out as the Ruskies are coming in and they're doing whatever they're gonna do, and that's yet to be determined. We don't know what's going to happen with that. I hear a lot of people acting like they're fairly sure. I don't know. I'm not sure. But a lot of the women and children are getting out of the country. A lot of them are leaving. But guess what? They're not letting the men out. Why is that? Because they are going to be forcefully conscripted into fighting, right, for the country. That brings up a really, really interesting question. And that is, and I have never been in favor of universal or conscription. I've never been in favor of the draft. And people can say, and I wrote about it in one of my books, people can say, well, but you have to have a way to make people, stand up. When you got to go to war, you got to go to war, and you need all your people. Well, first off, I agree with Smedley Butler, and that is that most of these wars are started by the moneyed class to make more money, and they conscript the working class people to go fight it. So most of these wars aren't necessary anyway. Okay, they're done for money. I would say hardly any of them are necessary. They're done for money. And when you have something like ours, a draft, a conscription, a selective service, and I remember, luckily I wasn't drafted. I was waiting. I thought I was going. We were all getting ready to go to Vietnam back in my day. You ever heard that song by Country Joe and the Fish, the Vietnam song? Great song. I might post it over here. It kind of points out some of the things. But the reason that I'm against it is, as I thought through the years, and as because like most people, I just accepted, well, it's a draft. You're a citizen. You got to fight. You got to defend your country. And as some of us, I was going to say most of us, but as some of us get a little bit older and wiser, and we see how the people who are conscripted are used by the people who conscript them and send them off to be ruined, I realize from the writings of others that it implies an ownership of the individual by the state. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree with slavery, and I don't agree that the state has any interest. By that I mean any ownership of any part of a citizen within it. And actually, I've dealt with that. I've started dealing with that a little bit in the fifth book, my fifth book that just came out, The Blessings of Freedom. What does it? What is it that gives a country, a government, the right to essentially go get somebody, force them to come serve? If the person who doesn't want to do it, it's involuntary servitude, and I know that it's dolled up in patriotism. It's you can mother an apple pie and you got to do it for your country and everything like that. Well, if it's a worthy cause, you really don't need to do that. If it's a worthy cause and the people understand that it's necessary, people will join, as we've seen since 9/11, which I have my own opinions on that I won't express here. But we've seen that when people really feel that it's necessary, the people do stand up. You need a draft. You need conscription. When you don't think you can make people stand up, you can't convince people that it is a worthy cause. That's why they had to have a draft during World War I and World War II. Looking back on it, we have this idea that everybody was for those wars. They weren't. They weren't at all. Matter of fact, it could be argued that a majority of Americans were against both of those wars and had to be convinced through various propaganda and stories and things like that, and back channel machinations and kind of some setup some very dishonest stuff. They finally got to where Americans kind of accepted those wars. They never wanted to go to those wars. They never believed in them, at least until enough propaganda was shoveled down their throats. So when we see that Ukraine is not allowing their males between 18 and 60 or 65, whichever it is, to leave their country, they have made their country a prison. Much like our government did here when they restricted international flight or international border crossings without proof of a vaccination, that created a prison. It made our country a prison. Well, that's what they've done to Ukraine. These are the things that happen that people don't really see. But you can be sure that the powers that be do. And I know that the Democrats have started putting out these ideas a little while back about, well, we need to include women in the selective service too. So they not only want to enslave your sons, they want to enslave your daughters at their whim if they need them to go fight for money when they decide. I could say more with this, but I'm not going to. I just wanted to throw that out there, and I think that everybody should keep a very close eye on what's going on with Ukraine and with Russia, and don't just accept what you've heard on the surface about the situation or about those countries or about those leaders. When we think about Ukraine, before this happened, what did we think about Ukraine? We need to remember that. It is the cesspool of corruption of Europe, of Eastern Europe, right? It's where all those shenanigans with the Bidens happened, right? I would venture to call it, I kind of referred to this over on the previous video. If there was a center of organized crime in that region, it would be Odessa. It was the center of many things in Europe and Asia that you don't want to support. And we can say that, well, Putin wants to install a friendly leader. We don't continue that and say, just like we did. Games are being played. Games are being played by these special interests and interesting groups for their benefit, not ours. To make money for them. To make money for people who are pulling the strings so far back we can't even see them. I think that's all I'm going to say. I look forward. Anybody would like to make a comment on this? I welcome it, and I look forward to seeing it. Some of you, a lot of you probably know what I'm talking about here. So comment, put your comments down there, and probably everybody can learn from them. Okay. Well, I don't know how much longer we're going to be consumed with this stuff before we get back to some things closer to home. But you can be sure, you can be sure that one of the reasons this is going on is so we stop thinking about all the things that are closer to home, because they're not done with this stuff yet. And we can't think that they are. So I'll let you go with that. Remember, America needs a reversion. It needs you to be a part of it. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.